And it's interesting that on the front of the race is Lizzie Armistead and Tiffany Cromwell. They train together all the time. They both live down in Monaco now. Just looking through the front of the peloton, let's just pick out some of the riders. Left-hand side in the white, the German champion Trixie Warwick. Next to her is Lisa Brennauer, a world time trial champion. The Boels Dolmans team massing at the front. I notice Annette Edmondson, they're the Swedish champion in the white jersey with the blue and yellow. Emma Johansson at the front of this race. So it is the big names who are all there massing, keeping themselves out of trouble. Far right-hand side, taking her sunglasses off, is the French rider and the world champion Pauline Ferrand-Prévot.
Well, that's interesting that she's just hooked them on a t-shirt like she's out for a casual day shopping. Sunglasses, normally the cyclists put them on their helmet, but she's got them hanging off the zip of her jersey there. So we see another rider just put their hand up. That rider wants a service, probably a puncher in the front there.
That's Aude Bianic, the rider who's riding for one of the French teams in here. The French have got the French national team. They have Pauline Ferrand-Prévot in the Rabo Live team. Also in here is a Puerto Charentes Futuroscope squad from France, all made up of French riders. So it was one of the riders there, Aude Bianic, who was looking to go back to the team car. Past Les Invalides, wonderful sights here in Paris. Unusually, actually, that the rain is falling here, as we now see the Italian champion near the front, Elena Cecchini.
Well, Elena Cecchini's had a fabulous season with the Lotto Soudal team. It's very unusual to see an Italian rider go outside of being in an Italian team into an international team. Lotto obviously being based in Belgium, and she's just taken leaps and bounds this year. She is a very, very highly respected rider in any type of race, whether it be flat or hilly. She's not known as a climber, she's not known as a sprinter, but she's pretty good across all of terrains, and you know, an outside chance also today for a top 5.
Yeah, Elena Cecchini, as you said, is one of those riders, as we see a puncture for Charlotte Becker of the High-Tech Products team, a former world champion, of course. And now we get an attack at the front as one of the Orica AIS team go clear.
Well, that's Gracie Elvin, another Australian rider that's had a phenomenal season with 2 UCI race wins. She won in Guick in a very, very impressive style. It was a funny story, actually. She got a puncher and she got, you know, off the back to get a change from the car, but the driver and the mechanic could not get out of the car. They had themselves locked in, so she was standing there.
The child locks were on.
Lost about 4 minutes or 5 minutes just watching them sitting in the car thinking, what are they doing, waiting for a wheel? Eventually she got it, she got back into the peloton, and then she went on the attack like she is now, and she won the race. And it was a big race in Europe for her to win.
Very, very strong indeed, isn't she? Based down in Varese, I think, in Italy, most of the season. But great to see her on the attack. One of the 12 Australian professionals that are in this race. 46.5 kilometres to go. First real animation, and of course, the riders will have had the nervousness of the crashes, but now the tiredness will start to get into the legs of some riders, and we will start to see more attacks starting to happen.
Well, it's interesting from Orica AIS thinking about what their team tactic will be today. They've got a sprinter from the track in Mel Hoskins out there, but they've also got Emma Johansson, who's one of the... She won a race just 3 days ago, touring in one of the hardest tours on the women's calendar, and she won it. So she's had 3 days rest. She's here. Are they going to ride for Emma Johansson, or are they going to do a lead out for a sprint for the Australian Mel Hoskins?
When you work your way through all the different teams that are riding, the 20 women's teams that we're seeing here in La Course, you can pick out a clear sprinter in terms of who they might lead out, can't you?
I think a lot. We see Gracie Elvin here now. She's doing the job for probably to soften up the group for Emma Johansson to have a sprint, or for Mel Hoskins. So it's interesting tactics.
Here's Gracie Elvin as she works her way downhill, 45.6 kilometres to go, and the Australian rider is going clear of this peloton, the first attack to really happen. Gracie Elvin then opening up a little bit of an advantage now on this peloton, and they look like they're either letting her go clear or she's just super strong.
Well, you can see it's Gagne on the front, the American champion for Boels Dolmans, and I think she is trying to pull that back. She's really putting pressure on the pedals, but Gracie Elvin is in such fine form. She won a stage at Thuringen just last week, which is one of the toughest stage races on the women's calendar, and you can see she is really, really moving.
So 12 seconds she's now opened up with 45 kilometers remaining. She looks very, very focused, really powering this bike on. The Orica AIS team made up of Emma Johansson, Melissa Hoskins, as Rochelle's mentioned, Chloe McConville, Amanda Spratt, or Spratty as she's known, and Lizzie Williams, all the Australian riders with one Swedish rider in here.
That's right. Normally the Swedish rider is their lead rider, but like we said, she's just come off a very demanding tour that she won, so she has got good form. But the Orica AIS team obviously sending riders out there to take opportunity, like Gracie Elvin is doing right now. But if she gets pulled back, that's great for riders like Emma Johansson that want a harder race. So Orica AIS are performing the race that I think they wanted to right now.
A lovely study there then of Gracie Elvin as she sits back in the saddle and churns that gear on. She has a nice style on the bike, doesn't she? Quite a long reach in terms of how she sits on the bike.
She looks really, really comfortable there. She's in the zone. She's in a, you know, she's done this many times. She was one of two riders have only ever won the National Australian Championships 2 years in a row, and she was one of them. The one before that was Kathy Watt. So she knows how to be out there by herself, set a tempo, get into a rhythm, and you can see a bit of nervousness in the bunch now because they don't want to let it go too far up the road.
I also noticed that here on the cobbles, some bottles flying out of bottle cages because they're just rumbling across the cobbles of the Champs-Élysées, and then the bottles drop out. That causes some problems. Riders go over the top of them, but of course many of these bottles now designed so you ride over the top pings off and then the contents disappear, rather than previously where you hit the bottle and it was a full-on hit of something like a cobble almost. Gracie Elvin then, 12 seconds. She hasn't looked around once since she's gone on the attack. She's decided to go clear, and if someone comes up to her, then someone comes up to her. But she's decided that now is the time to make her move on the roads around the Champs-Élysées here for La Course. Still 13 seconds, so it's not going up too much, but she's working very hard indeed.
Well, I think the peloton are just trying to control this. They've not got a specific chase, but you can see three riders there, Amanda Spratt, Emma Johansson and Mel Hosking, very, very focused on the next move if Gracie Elvin gets caught back. 43
kilometers to go as we look down on the Louvre here in the middle of Paris. And we see everyone out there still enjoying being tourists in the centre of this magnificent city, with Gracie Elvin on the attack right now for the Orica AIS team. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot wears #1 today as the world champion. She is not, of course, the defending champion of this race. #1 is normally given to the defending champion, but as a world champion, she has been swapped into that number as Marianne Vos is not racing. They now exit the tunnel, and it's Boels Dolmans who are still on the front of the race, keeping control. Wiggle Honda also near the front, and for the first time, we see Giorgia Bronzini. Giorgia Bronzini, a double world champion, of course, in women's racing.
Well, she would normally come to a race like this in Paris on the Champs-Élysées as the #1 sprinter, but she's obviously put faith into today her teammate Jolien Dauder, Belgium national champion, so it's a little bit of a different role for Giorgia Bronzini today.
Looking down here on this peloton, 16 seconds is the advantage for this Australian rider as she continues her effort, and she's starting to build her advantage right now. 17 seconds, so the pace has gone out of the peloton as they make their way back towards the Champs-Élysées for this next climb up towards the Arc de Triomphe. Looking here then at Gracie Elvin, the lone leader of La Course by Le Tour de France. 42 kilometers now remaining in La Course, and the lone leader, Gracie Elvin, with her advantage coming down. The chase is on. It went out to 17 seconds. It's now down to 9 seconds. It'll be interesting to see which team are doing the chasing.
It really would be, because the tactics of the big teams like Orica AIS, I think they're doing exactly what they want to do here, put Gracie out there and put pressure on teams to chase. Unfortunately, it's not going to work if it's not the teams chasing of the really big names. You see now some of the smaller teams moving to the front because they want to be in with a chance as well, and they also want to show their faces. This is one of the very few times that women's cycling gets to be televised live globally around the world. So there's teams there that are just coming to the front, and they're not the teams of those favourite riders that Orica AIS want to put pressure on. So maybe that's not playing right into their hands, but they definitely wanted to have Gracie Elvin up the road to just make the other teams have to work that little bit harder.
Now, Rochelle, you're so involved in the women's sport from a management point of view, media point of view, and we saw last year the inaugural La Course by Le Tour de France. How much impact does it have to have a race like this for the women's sport?
Oh, I think the women's peloton underestimated how big and how profitable it was for the sport, La Course last year, because it was a new race on the calendar that came on quite late and was just kind of fitted into the programs that they already had planned. But then after being here and riding around on the Champs-Elysees and seeing the attention that women's cycling gets and being able to showcase themselves, the athletes, the women's sport, they've realised that this is really, really big and made it a priority for this year. Now they come here in full force. They make it a target of the, race calendar, and it is the most prestigious race that a female could win in women's cycling.
Looking down across Paris right now, across to La Défense. 40 kilometres remaining, so you really do think that this race is having a massive impact?
Absolutely. I think to have a women's race held by the Tour de France for women's cycling, it's made the general public aware of what female cyclists actually do. And what do? They do the same as men's cycling. And having events like this run alongside the men's Tour de France just brings it all a little bit more realistic. I know as an athlete in my 10 years of competing, when somebody asked me what do I do, it was a half-an-hour conversation to explain what I actually do. But now they say we do what the men do. We have a Tour de France event, we have a Vuelta event, we have a Giro d'Italia. We have all of these races, and that's what our sport is. And these are professional athletes, and they are performing at the highest level in the sport.
And I think you can also see that the level of this racing is going up all the time. The ability of these riders is improving, the way they work as teams, the tactics, the setups. I walked down today with you to walk down and talk to the riders, and I kind of took in the fact that there's a puncture here for one of the Input squad. Will make their way back to the rear of the peloton. But I kind of took in, right, hang on a minute, let's just look at La Course, compare it to last year. And I've noticed this happening in other areas of cycling, whether it be in Great Britain with men's teams or whatever it might be. And I looked, and today Rabo Liv have a bus. They didn't have a bus 2 years ago. Puncture now for Anna Trevisi. That was the rider who's going to the rear of the peloton. Lizzie Armisted's squad, Bowles Dolmans, had a bus. They also had a mechanics truck. They had team. Oh, another crash, and another rider hits the deck. Shelley Olds, I think it is. And Shelley Olds has taken a wheel taken away from her there, one of the French riders who was avoiding a crash on the other side of the road. And I think Shelley Olds is not having a great day today. She has had, I've seen her in a couple of crashes so far. That's
not good for Shelley Olds. I mean, she was definitely one of the favourites for a top 5 will be on the podium today. So she looks a little bit disappointed now, only 39 kilometres from the finish. Still time to get back in. Hopefully her team comes back and gives her a hand, because she would be the designated sprinter for the LA Cipollini team. So hopefully they can get her back in.
Yeah, I was talking to her before the start. You'll notice, if you're a fan of the women's cycling peloton, that they've changed their kit for today. It's pink as opposed to luminous yellow. I talked to her before the start. She switched squads recently from the Bigler team back to LA Cipollini. That was her squad of last season, and I said, why have you done that? Are you happy? Everything to do with that move. And she said, I'm back where I feel like I'm back at home. I'm happy, and a rider mentally has to be happy.
Well, that's right. There was a lot of talk about Shelley Olds making that switch from the Team Bigler back into her old team of LA Cipollini mid-season. So it was a lot of talk. There is a period, a window of June 1st to June 25th, where riders can switch pro teams from one to another if they get the general consent and a document from their current team to move over to another team. So obviously they agreed that it wasn't working out, gave it a go, and decided, okay, I'm going to go back to what I know best, where I feel comfortable. And this is her first performance now back in the LA Cipollini colours, and she'll be very disappointed if she can't get back in to have a go at the sprint.
No, she really felt like she wanted to have a big go at the sprint today and try and bring home the victory for this squad. We'll see whether she gets in. She's right on the rear of this peloton again, so she's obviously on good form. If she's had, I've seen her in at least 2 chases back to the peloton today, so the legs are obviously good.
Yeah, definitely. If that was her and not one of her teammates, it's already back on the back of the peloton, then she has good legs. We can see now it's the Optum Kelly Benefit Strategies team now closing in on Gracie Alvin, the Australian from Orica AIS, who's been out there now for quite a while. So I think she'll feel a bit of relief there, but she's still got more to do. She's going to have to recover and get ready for that lead out for Mel Hoskins or Emma Johansson.
You'll notice a lot of gaps in this peloton right now. Riders choosing their line. They don't want to be tucked in and compact on the wheels right now, because they sense that the roads are so slick and so dangerous that they want to leave a little bit of a gap so they can maneuver their way around anything that does actually happen. Notably, though, the average speed on that last lap was just about 25 miles an hour.
Well, there was a lot of discussion, I know, in the Wiggle Honda team internally, not in front of the athletes, but amongst the staff, about how to manage the mentality of the athletes regarding danger and risk versus winning this race. A lot of riders go into races thinking, okay, the World Championships is the big thing. We want to, you know, not take any risks, don't be dangerous, don't push your way through the bunch. If the gap closes, just let it go. What did the management of the team want to influence the athletes to do? Well, obviously, this is the biggest race of the women's calendar, aside from the World Championships, media-wise, publicity-wise, prestige. So there's a lot of discussion that goes on about how to talk to the athletes about, okay, this is the race that we're going to go for. Orica AIS back on the attack. That's Lizzie Williams. She's had some trouble and only come back into the bunch not long ago, and she's just gone straight off the front for Orica AIS.
It's not an easy race today. The weather conditions aren't great. It's windy, it's tough, and the Champs-Élysées is not as easy as everyone thinks it is. It is 7 seconds now, 34 kilometers to go. 8 laps have now been completed in this race. 5 laps are now left of this Champs-Élysées circuit, and 2 riders are very slightly clear. But the Rabo Liv team have refused to let this race disappear up the road, and they now bring the race all back together. And it's Anna van der Breggen, the winner of Flèche Wallonne, who is the first rider to make the junction. She doesn't even look at the 2 riders, and she goes straight past.
Well, Rabobank, they obviously want to have a really hard race here, Rabo Liv, so Anna van der Breggen forcing the pace on the front. We can expect a late attack from Brand, one of the other riders from the Rabo Liv team, but it could also be a tactic to bring Pauline Ferrand-Prévot back into the race for a sprint.
Making their way uphill then, that will be the sprint point. They've just gone past in the men's race later on today. But we look down on this women's peloton. The pace is very high indeed now, as Anna van der Breggen of the Rabo Liv team sets the tempo on the front. She's a fantastic rider, tucked in on the wheels. The rider Chantal Black, and sitting not too far from the front is Tiffany Cromwell of Australia. 33 kilometers now remaining in La Course. We're on 5 laps to go, and Anna van der Breggen, who's an extremely talented bike rider, is lining this race out because Rabo Liv, Rochelle, do not want a bunch sprint.
Well, if they do want a bunch sprint, it would be for Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. She's not known as a pure sprinter, that's for sure, but she is very, very fast, and she's in France. She's got the whole nation behind her for today. So it is possible that My idea is that Anna van der Breggen is setting the pace very fast on the front, setting it up for another counter-attack from one of their other strong riders.
Yeah, well, let's run through this Rabo Liv team. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, the 22-year-old world champion. She won it in Ponferrada in a magnificent race. Lucinda Brand is also in the team. Delita de Jong, Anuska Costa, Monique Teneglo and Anna van der Breggen. Van der Breggen has won Het Nieuwsblad. She's won the Flesh Wallon. She was second in Drenthe. She's an extremely good classics bike rider, and this is not unlike a classic right now, with the rain pouring, the cobbles and everything else.
Well, she's been on the front now, just driving the pace for quite a while, so it would be interesting to know if her team director said in the team meeting, when there's 5 laps to go, I want you on the front and I want you to split this up, make it hard, make the race hard, and just ride on the front. Or whether she's just decided, okay, my legs are good, I'm going to make this a little bit hard. So it might have even been an order from their captain on the road. We don't know who that is today, but normally there's a captain on the road that says, hey, this is too slow, let's start lining it out. That's Cecchini, just dropped off the back, so we don't know if she had some problems, but we have to assume that she did, because she's one of the strongest riders in this bike race, riding for the Lotto Sudol team. So she's just making her way back to the back of the peloton.
Yeah, she's making her way back to this peloton very, very quickly indeed. But she may well have had a puncture or a bike change or something, but she looks like she's almost on the string. She doesn't look like she's getting dropped by this peloton. She looks like she's working her way back. And now Tiffany Cromwell goes to the front yet again. This rider, 5th in the World Championships previously, looking strong today in the new colours of the Velocio SRAM team. Another Australian on the wheel in Nettie Edmondson.
Well, it's interesting that these riders are just going to the front and really making it hard. You know, they're not waiting to do some attacks and launches. They're just on the front, just riding hard.
Nettie Edmondson, world champion on the track. She has got a bit of a Scottish heritage.
Yeah.
And her brother also a fantastic track rider.
Yeah, they're a fantastic family, the Edmondsons, and this year Nettie Edmondson winning 2 gold medals on the track in the Omnium and in the team's pursuit. And out of that, 4 riders that rode the team's pursuit for Australia, 3 of them are in this race today. So Nettie Edmondson, Mel Hoskins and Amy Cure for the Lotto Sudol team. So we see quite a few track riders here, and Nettie Edmondson, she rides on the same team as one of her biggest rivals, which is Jolien Daughter in the Omnium. We did want to see Laura Trott here, the other big rival in the Omnium. We've got Kirsten Wild here riding, big rival in the Omnium for the Olympics coming up in Rio. So a little bit disappointing not to see Laura Trott here today, actually.
Yeah, Laura Trott has been on a big training camp with the Great Britain team, with Joe Rousel and Danny King and everyone. So she is not racing here this afternoon. 30 kilometres now remaining, and Lizzie Armistead, the British champion, is getting involved in the mix at the front. So Bowles Dolmans have also decided that they now want to make this race a little bit harder. So many teams now trying to drive this pace on, and the British champion sitting second wheel.
They're certainly trying to thin out the peloton. They want to drop a few people so the race becomes between, you know, less people so they can control it a little bit more. But we've seen another crash here, so it's been crash after crash.
This is Brianna Vala of the United States of America riding for the Optum Kelly Benefits team. And it sounds like another crash, I think. I've just maybe heard on Radio Tour, but we'll double check. She's safely back up and running though.
Well, it's certainly quite technical out there with the rain on the cobbles. Obviously, a lot of these women race all year round and through the classic season. We see one of the Wiggle Honda riders was caught up a bit earlier, coming back with the team car to strengthen that team. We did see Giorgia Bronzini at the front there controlling the race, which is unusual that she'd be used in that role.
Here on the front of the peloton then, as we see little moves starting to happen. Lots of pace setting going on right now. Inside the final 30 kilometres then of racing in La Course by the Tour de France, and we're really seeing the tactics starting to be played out by the big squads. Orica AIS making the pace hard with a number of different attacks. Rabo Liv with Anna van der Breggen, Bowles Dolmans with Lizzie Armistead and Tiffany Cromwell of Velocio SRAM, all driving the pace on the front. And Rochelle, it looks like the rain might be relenting just a little bit now.
They've still got to deal with the challenges of these wet roads, and looks like we've just had so many crashes there today, and everybody's trying to get out of trouble. I think that's why the pace is held so high. Now just inside the last 30 kilometres, we're at the business end of the bike race. All the big teams have their favourites in there, so everybody's lining it up. They assume it's going to come down to a sprint. There'll be some riders that try to take an opportunity, but now they'll start to be thinking about, okay, the sprinters especially, 30 kilometres to go, getting very close now.
Yeah, they'll be just trying to work the tactics out. A few more conversations will be going on. Megan Garnier is towards the front of this race. The rider in the Stars and Stripes is the American champion. She won the Strada Bianca this year. Magnificent race across the white Sterati roads of Tuscany in Italy. And now it is Top Sport Vlaanderen who are setting the tempo. And don't be surprised if you see Kelly Drutz, the other very good track rider, come bursting out of this pack to take the victory in La Course. They are very confident about her ability. I saw them at dinner last night and they were having a team talk. They clearly think they can win this race.
Well, Vlaanderen, they certainly have a few riders up there now, so they'll be trying to keep Kelly Drutz out of trouble. She definitely has a chance. She's a very, very fast sprinter, and she's made that conscious decision now that she wants to go to Rio for the road racing. So she pushes the track aside for a little while, and the team are right behind her today.
Looking down then on this peloton as they make their way around this corner yet again. When you hit this bottom corner, it's 350 meters to the finish line. And as we've seen many times in the men's Tour de France, you can go a little bit too early, particularly on this uphill stretch on the cobbles. We walked down here earlier on, Rochelle, didn't we? The line we think to take is the left-hand line.
Well, we had the Wiggle Honda team had the benefit of Baden Cook coming over to the camp this morning and talking to our Australians, Nettie Edmondson and Chloe Hosking, who will ride for Jolien Daughter in the finish. You can see them in the middle of the shot there, getting together. And Baden Cook was saying he was second twice on the Champs-Élysées, and he told them exactly how he did that, where they have to go, where the lead out has to happen. He did take into account that the men may be moving a little bit faster, so they adjusted the distances. But he had a really good talk to Annette Edmondson and Chloe Hosking about how he and Robbie McEwen do their sprints on the Champs-Élysées, and gave a lot of insight and confidence to the riders about what they should be doing in the final metres of the sprint.
That's really, really valuable to have the inside of a green jersey of the Tour de France. Give these women riders that little bit of added advantage when it comes to the sprint.
Well, it certainly does. You just keep those things in your mind when you're coming into the sprint, that I have to be on the left-hand side of the road. I have to go the long way around. I could get closed out if I do that, but then I have to fight, switch my line, and try to get back on that left-hand side of the road for the sprint. He also gave, Baden Cook also gave a valuable piece of advice that it's very hard to come off the wheel on the left. You need to come off the wheel on the right for the win. So, yeah, some insights into how to win on the Champs-Élysées.
Yeah, you noticeably see normally Mark Cavendish goes left-hand side and comes off the wheel on the right. So, and that's generally what happens. So Baden giving your team some very, very good advice there to see what actually will happen later on in this sprint. 27 kilometers to go. 4 laps now of the Champs-Élysées circuit. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot still near the front, wearing number 1 as the world champion. And thanks for joining us for today's live coverage of the second of La Course by Le Tour de France. Now, Rochelle, also this season we're going to see the first Vuelta a España La Course.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing event here for the women to be able to race in a Tour de France event, and now having word that there's a women's Vuelta event, it's getting the riders very excited. And you know, it's motivation, but it's prestige, and you can see that the women have just really embraced this opportunity to race in front of such magnificent crowds. They're absolutely buzzing. They're putting on a great race. We see now another attack from Orica AIS, and they've been the most active team for sure. That's Lizzie Williams again. So she's already been on the attack. You can see that she's getting quite tired, but she may have just thought to herself, yeah, I'm really, really tired. I'm going to give one last effort just to make this race a little bit harder.
That's a magnificent attack there by Lizzie Williams. Gritted teeth as she makes her way up the climb, and it shows just how steep this Champs-Élysées is. You can see everyone running out of the shops and coming up to the barriers to see these 120 athletes of the 20 teams of La Course by Le Tour de France, and Lizzie Williams looking good. On the wheel of Lizzie Armistead, though, Rochelle, you're just pointing out, that's an interesting move.
Hannah Barnes. She's sitting there on the wheel of Lizzie Armistead. That's probably the one that she knows best, that wheel, and what a wheel to be on, in fact. So very smart decision there, but it looks like Hannah Barnes is quite comfortable.
She does look very, very comfortable. I talked to her earlier this morning. Hannah, of course, won a stage of the Aviva Women's Tour, and Hannah said, I haven't raced for a little while. I haven't raced since the National Championships, but I've been training. The legs feel good. Let's see what happens.
Well, she's certainly a name that's been put on my favourites list today because she's a very, very good sprinter. We haven't seen a lot of her racing in Europe. She's been racing in America, but when she does, and like at the Aviva Women's Tour, we're always very impressed.
The tempo of this peloton is increasing now. It was 40 kilometres an hour for the previous laps. It's now 40.8, so the tempo is certainly going up all the time as we start to make our way towards the finish line of La Course by the Tour de France. On the front note, still Lizzie Williams, the gap starting to open. Sorry, no, she's been taken over there by another member of the Orica AS team.
That's Lizzie Williams' teammate, Gracie Elvin, who we saw have probably the most significant break of the day earlier in the race. So she's already spent a couple of laps off the front, very demanding couple of laps, but we see now that she's really driving the pace. So she's in fine form. She won a race at Turingen, a stage of that race just a week ago. So she's in fine form, and she's certainly been the most aggressive rider in the race today.
There's Corinne Riviera, who is the teammate of Hannah Barnes, wearing number 91. Hannah Barnes and her normally have a little bit of a tag team going on when it comes to the sprint. In the United States of America, where United Healthcare are based, these two riders are the riders who really dominate the sprints that are going on, and we'll see whether they manage to do that again today. Looking through this peloton, a little bit messy, but Trixie Warwick looks very comfortable, the German champion. I'm just looking to see what other sprints are in there. Corinne Rivera head bobbing all over the place. She's desperately trying to stay in this peloton. And Rochelle, as you know, having been a sprinter in your career, you can be suffering terribly, and then you can sense the finish line and suddenly feel okay.
Absolutely. Once they have 1 lap or 1.5 laps to go, nothing, none of the memories of the previous, 2 hours stay in your head. It's all erased, and you come alive towards the end of the race. And we see that all the favourite sprinters are in there. One we haven't spoken about is the German Lisa Brennauer. We haven't spoken about her much, but she has had a fantastic season this year. And sprinting, she won the Aviva Women's Tour in the UK. She won Energy Walk Tour. She's won a lot of world-class sprints. We see Megan Gagne there of the Bowles Dolmans team of Lizzie Armistead, so they mean business as well.
Corinne Rivera in quite a big gear there. She's the rider there wearing number 91 in the blue and white of United Healthcare. This team looked after by a British ex-professional rider, Rachel Heel, who looks after that squad in the United States. She's here today as the team director, and notably Rachel Heel is one of the only women who has been a sports director in the... Oh, another massive crash here, and a lot of riders have hit the deck, and one is Elena Cecchini, the Italian champion. A lot of riders down with that big crash. Well, that was a big crash.
See one of the riders here quite heavily injured, not wanting to move. That doesn't look good.
Severina Rowe of Piatu Fiorente Futuroscope. She's hit the deck. Cecchini is down.
Cecchini not looking good, not moving too quick. Looks like there's a problem with her bike, and she's just got a teammate come along, but there's not much they can do. This is devastating for Cecchini, one of the outside favourites for a win or a podium today.
I think Anne-Sophie Duck is also down, one of the riders from Top Sport, Vlaanderen. Also held up here is Susanna Zorzi, the Italian rider. And it is slick out here now on these cobbles because the rain has stopped and it's starting to dry up a little bit. It makes it a little bit worse. As we look across the front of the peloton, the tempo goes out a little, and this peloton now is decimated, maybe 25 riders left.
It's very small now compared to when we started, so not far to go, 22 kilometres. Those riders who just crashed are going to have a very hard time coming back. So it looks like the podiums, the winners, are going to come from this group.
Well, that crash happened not right at the back. It happened maybe 3/4 of a way down the peloton. So it took a lot of riders out of this race. Let's hope they all get safely back up on their bikes, and maybe they'll make their way back into the finish. But right now, these 25, maybe I think it's around about 25 riders, maybe 30 at the most, look like they, as you said, Rochelle, will be the contenders. Lizzie Armistead having a conversation with her teammate. Alongside her, there'll be Chantal Black, the winner of the World Cup in Vagorda. And this is from Melissa Hoskins.
Well, this answers my question of the day about the tactics of Orica AIS, because it was a question mark. Would they ride for Mel Hoskins for a sprint, or would they try to set this up for Emma Johansson, who recently, 3 days ago, won Turingen Rundfahrt, one of the biggest races on the women's calendar? So Mel Hoskins now making it a hard race, exactly what Emma Johansson wants. She's obviously taken the sting out of her legs for a sprint, but doing the job for the team.
Looking down on this peloton then, it's a reduced peloton in terms of numbers, but there's some firepower in this group right now, and it's Emma Johansson who is on the front of this race right now. Emma Johansson hits the front for Orica AIS, setting the tempo. An immediate reaction now by Lizzie Armistead of Great Britain for Bowles Dolman. So Swedish rider, British rider, and in third place, I think, is Lucy Garner. But I'm just going to double check it is her. So interesting who's now floating to the top of this race as we get towards a conclusion.
Well, Lucy Garner, she finished second in the final stage of the Bene Tour just a few days ago. So she's got some form. She's very fast at the finish. Has she got the fitness at such a young age? She's won 2 Junior World Championships, so she definitely knows how to win a bike race.
She certainly does. She had a few problems with a knee injury that she got during the season by doing a lot of gym work, and now the tempo is certainly going up. It's now 43.3 kilometers an hour for that last lap of racing. We've seen the tempo go up by over 2 kilometers an hour.
Well, that was an interesting thing to see from the Orica AIS team when Mel Hoskins did that big attack on the uphill on one of the toughest parts of the circuit, and then Emma Johansson went to the front. She's trying to break it up, but it's proving very, very difficult. So who have Orica AIS left fresh for the finish? We thought they were doing the job for Emma Johansson. She's just had a really, really big move. You see Nettie Edmondson there looking after Jolien Dorda, and a lot of Live Plan Tour riders up there. That's the team of Lucy Garner. She must be feeling good, saying, I really feel good today. Let's get up there and do it.
There's a lot of conversations going on now, and another big attack on the right-hand side. And yet again, it's that same squad of Orica AIS, the team that are based down in Australia. They are registered in Australia. Was that Chloe McConville going on the attack there?
That was Amanda Spratt. We've seen her come into some fine form in the second part of the season now. A bit quiet on the early part of the season, but always up there in the top 5 and 10 at Turingen, one of those toughest tours last week. And now we see Rabo Liv saying, yeah, we want to be a part of this action. Closely covered by the Australian Tiffany Cromwell and Nettie Edmondson right behind there. So Tiff wants to drive this on. Tiffany Cromwell on the head of the bunch. She's got one of the favourites back there, Lisa Branower, so she'll just be wanting to keep Lisa out of trouble, keep the pace high. See to the left of your screen, just behind Lizzie Armistead is the Australian sprinter Chloe Hosking. She will be the most important part of the Wiggle Honda team today for their sprinter, Jolien Dorda.
Well, there's a helicopter that's been bringing us all the pictures in the murk and the rain out here in Paris. This peloton, though, are starting to really accelerate towards this finish line. 17.5 kilometers to go. Chantal Black is the rider in the red colours of the Bowles Dolmans team. Don't be confused that Lizzie Armistead is in a different jersey. She's the British champion with the red and blue bands around the middle. She won that in spectacular style in Lincoln just a few weeks ago. Also up towards the front of this race now is Rushley Buchanan of the United Healthcare team. Moving up on the left-hand side, Anna van der Breggen is still there for the Rabo Liv team, and the sprinter squads are starting to mass, and it's starting to get pretty compact at the front of this race.
We haven't seen much of Kirsten Wield's team, High Tech. Lauren Kitchen was going to be a strong part of this team, but she had an early crash. We don't know if she recovered from that, if she'll be able to do anything, or whether she got back into the race. But Kirsten Wield, we haven't seen much of her either, so hiding in the back of the peloton, but I'm sure within the last 10 kilometres we're going to see her come into position.
17 kilometres now remaining in La Course by Le Tour de France. Towards the back is Helen Wyman, wearing number 186 there. Helen Wyman, a European champion at cyclocross. She won't be minding being in the rain at all this afternoon. She is firmly in there, and Lotte Lepisto now arrives at the front of the race for the Bigler team. Lizzie Armistead having a conversation with her teammates, just checking how things are going. She's always talking, always checking how things are happening in this race. Many riders taking on a few gels to try and get a little bit of final energy into that body. They'll also take a little bit of caffeine on as well, as we look at this peloton going again along the roads with Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, the world champion, sitting towards the back of the peloton right now. UCI having a lot of discussions at the front of the race. Trixie Warwick also there. 16 kilometres now remain in La Course by the Tour de France. Inside the final 16 kilometres of racing in La Course by Le Tour de France. The last lap was 43.3 kilometres an hour. This peloton is starting to accelerate as they recognise that this race is coming to its conclusion. Recently at the front, Lizzie Armistead has been talking to her teammates, trying to get the tactics absolutely right. We said the rain was relenting. Well, that's not happening. It's absolutely pouring down now on the Champs-Élysées as Boels Dolmans, Liv Planteur, High Tech and Orica AAS are the teams at the front.
Well, we've seen Orica AAS have a really ignited race. They've gone out there with a lot of aggression. You see on second wheel their leader, Emmy Johansson, just cleaning her glasses. So she looks very, very comfortable. You see her just getting out of the seat there. She knows her team's done a fabulous job, and she's got Mel Hosking just to the left of your screen. They're having a chat now. And Lizzie Williams trying to get in on that conversation as well, just to make sure all the communication's clear. What does Emmy Johansson want in the finish of this race?
Well, how does she win this race? Emma Johansson, not the fastest sprinter in this peloton. How do Orica AAS outwit all the rest of these teams?
Well, it's interesting because she's not the fastest sprinter, but she does have Mel Hoskins, one of the fastest sprinters, and they both look like they've got some pretty good form. So it will be interesting to see if they just go for a lead out and for a sprint. Emmy Johansson usually tries to find her own way around the bunch, but she does have a very, very strong team. In saying that, Gracie Elvin, one of the strongest lead out riders, has just punctured. So that's a little bit, that might be what they're talking about. Okay, Gracie's just punctured. We need to control this a little bit.
14 kilometres to go. The rain pouring down on the backs of these riders as Bigler race towards the front. Looks like the figure of Iris Schleppendal towards the front of this race. Lizzie Armistead has hardly ever been outside the top 5 riders in this race. The British champion, she crashed on the final turn last year as we made our way across the Rue de Rivoli.
Well, we saw Lizzie Armistead win the first stage of the Aviva Women's Tour in the UK in fine style. So we know that she can sprint. Yeah, we probably should touch some wood when we mentioned the crash that she had after a victory salute. She won't be putting her hands up too easily after the finish of this race if she happens to win it with all the rain. But that was a bit of a devastating accident that took her out of that race. But she won the first stage against all the best sprinters in the world. So Lizzie Armistead, having crashed out last year with a kilometre to go, she'll be very, very motivated for a good finish here.
2 laps to go in La Course by Le Tour de France. This circuit, of course, is the 6.8 kilometre circuit on the Champs-Élysées. 89 kilometres in total is this race. If you're looking at the peloton, you're just joining us now, we've had a lot of crashes, punctures, mechanical problems. We've seen riders starting to come back into this field now. I've just seen, I think, Kirsten Wild, who is still in the cars and is trying to get herself through the convoy of cars back into this race to win La Course by Le Tour de France. And of course the pace in the peloton has calmed down a little bit, which may give Kirsten Wild the opportunity to come back. Right now she's the favourite before this race happened. She's been in the car, she's been chasing, and she's out of the race right now. And these riders, if they press on, will ensure that she does not win La Course by Le Tour de France again. again?
Well, she's a strong rider, so if she gets back in and she smells that finish, she'll be okay, but it's surely got to take something out of her legs coming back through the cars, and if not, just mentally as well. But she was second last year, so her motivation to try and take the win at La Course this year would have been very, very high. She's won a couple of races recently, but if you take her out of the race, you're looking at sprinters like Lizzie Armitstead, Lucy Garner, Jolene Daughter. She'll have the lead out from Chloe Hosking. Georgia Bronzini's in there as well. You can see now Orica AIS's rider just looking around, Mel Hoskings, and riding alongside Pauline Ferrand-Prévot.
Well, as Rochelle, you said earlier on, a big win in La Course is huge for these riders. It's such a massive race now already on the calendar, only 2 years in, as Orica IS start to soften things up. I think there's an attack on the right-hand side, and it's Emma Johansson. No, it's not Emma Johansson who's gone clear. Another Orica AIS rider goes clear again. They're just softening up for Emma.
It looks like that's what they're trying to do, take opportunities, but at the same time make it a very, very hard race into the finish for Emma Johansson. But that's Amanda Spratt. Like we said, she's been very consistent the last week in Thuringen, running top 10s all the time. And the Orica AIS team as a whole have just really made this race alive. They had a very, very slow start to the season. A lot of riders injured, and, you know, race tactics weren't spot on, but the last few weeks they have really lifted their game.
Yeah, they certainly have, as we see Spratty on the front. Anna van der Breggen is in second wheel. I think Lucy Garner is still in there, you know. I think I spotted her sitting 3 or 4 wheels from the front, the former or the double world champion. I saw both her wins in those junior world titles, and Lucy Garner, as her sprint improves at an elite level as opposed to being a junior, will become a possible race winner of all these big one-day races. They just have to get her to the finish and put her in the right position.
Well, that's the question mark. It's not easy to get in position with such strong teams now. It's going to be very fast into the finish with the lead outs of these riders. A little bit calm now. The rain is really, really coming down. But who's your pick going to be, Anthony, for the sprint?
You're now putting me completely on the spot. Well, we said before, didn't we? We picked out our favourite riders. Another problem here for Megan Garnier at the back, the American champion. And we mentioned riders like Kirsten Wild. We talked about Shelley Olds. We mentioned, I said to you that I thought Lucy Garner might be on the podium, and we didn't quite disagree on that because of the time that it's taken for her to come through from being a junior to a senior rider. But right now they're all, with the exception of Kirsten Wild, are still there, and I won't discount 2 of your riders. I think the 2 favourites before the start were Kirsten Wild and Jolene Daughter, and Jolene Daughter's here.
She's there and she's comfortable, so I think my opinion is, along with Jolene Daughter, now becomes one of the favourites if Kirsten Wild doesn't make it back. We see just in the back of your picture that Kirsten Wild, with her team all around her, is making it back to the peloton. Here she is. So that's your favourite for the day. A very, very strong sprinter. Second last year to Marianne Vos. She's looking at a bike, so there may still be some problems. She's got a few teammates there to help her get to the front in the last 11 kilometres, but she looks a bit unsure about her bike, so that may be playing with her head a little bit. Can she just put it aside? Does she need to have another bike change? Well, you've got other riders, other favourites like Jolene Daughter and also Lisa Branois up there. Lizzie Armitstead very comfortable the whole race. So I'd say now if Kirsten Wild is a bit affected by this mechanical and accident, that if she doesn't get back in there and just switch on, it's going to be between Jolene Daughter, Lizzie Armitstead, Lisa Branois, and maybe Lucy Garner, as you say.
You've got to say right now that the way that this race has been run on the last lap has played totally into the hands of Kirsten Wild, because she was out the back. If they'd driven on in that previous lap, I know it's pouring rain, she would not be back in this race right now. She may not have the legs anymore, but she'll now be renewed motivation, thinking, I've got back, now this race is possible. Lottie Becker was the rider who brought her back, a former world champion, of course. Lottie Becker brings Kirsten Wild back into the race. Wild is now making her way through, and when she gets to the front, which she will do now because she looks like she's happy with her bike, all the other sprinters are going to look round and they won't believe that she's there.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic job that she's got back into the peloton, and she looks quite comfortable. I mean, she's been in this position many, many times before, and mechanical so close to the finish, and she has strong support there with Lottie Becker, and I think we're going to see Kirsten Wheel in the mix for it now because she's moved the way up to the front. She looks very comfortable. Like I said, when you get that close to the finish, you put everything else out of your mind, and it's just about that sprint.
Well, this is going to be an interesting, maybe a little bit dangerous, maybe a little bit sketchy on some of the corners, run into the finish line because it has poured with rain throughout La Course by Le Tour de France. Thank you for joining us. Rochelle Gilmore with me in the commentary box, the former Commonwealth Games road race champion who would have been absolutely thriving on this run into the finish line right now. May not have worried too much about the rain, but would have been loving the fact that it was going to come down by the looks of things to a bunch sprint unless we see Emma Johansson go on the attack because I can't believe that she would leave it to a sprint.
Yeah, it would be, it's just so difficult for these riders to get off the front in the last kilometre or couple of kilometres because the pace is just so high. We've just seen now the first lull that we've seen of the race, but I think within another couple of kilometres it's going to start with the lead-out trains. Bowles-Dolmans have the strongest lead-out train there at the moment. Velocio Schramm for Lisa Brennauer, they're going to come to the front and have a strong... Velocio Schramm, they've won the team time trial 3 years in a row, and they have been known to be the strongest lead-out in the peloton, so we'll see them come to force. And now we see the rider of Kudoda trying to get her rider, sprinter Lepisto, up to the front. And Orica AIS now, a lot of riders there done a lot of work today to put Emma Johansson in a good position.
Giorgia Bronzini is also in here, the sprinter from Wiggle Honda, twice a world road race champion, and she likes that slight uphill finish. We saw her win one of those world titles in Copenhagen on the same weekend that Mark Cavendish won the men's road race title. Bronzini winning that uphill sprint, so she may not be able to go drag racing with Kirsten Wild on the flat, but she can certainly win when the road is going very slightly uphill. A problem there for the French rider, and that is Mathilde Favre, who is going back to the team cars, must have a puncture. The peloton now lining themselves up as they make their way in towards the conclusion of this lap. They will get the bell and they will set themselves up to decide who will be the winner of the second La Course by Le Tour de France. The crowds all out enjoying this racing. They've all got their umbrellas up and they are cheering these riders on as Bigler hit the front again in the white and blue.
Well, they're certainly putting a lot of faith in their sprinter, Lepisto, today. She's had a win just recently, so they're putting their faith into her, and we see the Wiggle Honda team there coming to the front for their sprinter, Chloe Hosking. That's the lead-out rider for Jolien Daughter, hanging at the back there, so I think she's in a little bit of trouble, so that'll play in the mind, obviously, of Jolien not having her lead-out rider right in front of her.
Helen Wyman there is the cyclocross rider, just 4 or 5 wheels from the back. She's doing well, staying in here in the peloton, but Chloe Hosking making her way up the right-hand side of the peloton now. She knows she has to get to the front for Jolien Daughter. The plan of the Wiggle Honda team to bring their sprinters to the front. They have got 2 options in Bronzini and Jolien Daughter as they make their way now in towards the final turn, and they'll set themselves up for the bell lap here in La Course. It's still Bigler with control. Christian Majeras, the Luxembourg champion, a teammate of Lizzie Armistead, is second wheel as they go through there. Now just remember, it's 350 meters from this bottom corner to the finish line, and you have to time your sprint absolutely right. Bigler on the front of the race. Also near the front, a Wiggle Honda. On the right hand side, Rabo Liv. Tucked in on the wheels are the Bowles-Dolmans team, and with now just inside 7 kilometers of racing remaining, La Course by Le Tour de France has got 1 lap to go.
Well, it's been an exciting race with all the crashes and the splits in the peloton, but as we predicted before, after seeing the last race last year, the first race, should I say, of the women's Tour de France event, that it doesn't lend itself to a breakaway because the pace is generally so high and all the riders want to be in for a chance. So not really knowing the course that well, only having raced it 1 year, they don't know how much distance to give. We haven't seen breakaways versus sprinters. We've just seen the 1 sprint last year. So for this reason, riders are keeping it all together for their sprinters.
This Bigler team are doing an incredible amount of work here. On the wheel of Vera Kududa is Carmen Small, a former world champion of the team time trial, a very, very good time trialist. Switched this season from Team 2016 in the United States to come back to Europe to ride for the Bigler squad. But she's a great rider to have in a lead-out train. She's a very good time trialist indeed, and she sits second wheel right now as the pace goes out slightly and everyone goes right across the road. The sprinters' trains are starting to accelerate now to the front. Another big attack, and it comes from Rabo Liv as they try to disrupt what is going on with the rest of the teams.
Well, that was a very, very strong attack from Rabo Liv. You can see this is probably Anna van der Breggen. We haven't got a good shot there, but it looks like it is. So one of their strongest riders trying to take an opportunity because they don't have a clear sprinter, but it will go in the advantage of Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, and they may try a counter-attack if this comes back.
A big, big attack then from Anna van der Breggen, a classic specialist, and she is enjoying being here in the rain and the cobbles as they make their way up towards the Arc de Triomphe. Two riders going clear. The second rider is from the Bigler squad, trying to get on terms. Is that Jolie Newmanville? We'll just double check, but United Healthcare trying to bring the race back together for their sprinter, Hannah Barnes, but also Corinne Riviera. Van der Breggen is really strong, and she is now accelerating hard and trying to go clear on this uphill section to the top of the road and round the Arc de Triomphe.
Well, it's an impressive move by Anna van der Breggen. If one rider can do it in this peloton, it's her. She's put a good gap into them, but once they start to come downhill, things might be a little bit different, but she's certainly very, very strong on this uphill section.
I think that might be Iris Schleppendale who's just holding back a little bit there. Just double check. No, it's Vera Kududa has done her work. Those legs are giving out a little bit now. And has that leader been caught as we go round the top there? I can't see whether she has or not. I think she may well have done. 5 kilometers of racing now remaining. No, she is still clear. And you do not want Anna van der Breggen to get this sort of lead. And Rabo Liv did say, I talked to Pauline Ferrand-Prévot before the start, and she said, we are going to go on the attack. And they look like they might have outwitted the rest of this opposition here.
Well, that was an impressive move by Van der Breggen, and she did it at just the right moment to use into her advantage the strength in her legs to get that gap. A really handy time trialer as well, so she's in a very, very good position to take this race. It's going to be up to the teams of the sprinters now. High Tech don't have a particularly strong team for Kirsten Wild, but Boels Dolmans, if they want to do something here, they're really going to have to lift the pace. Wiggle Honda have 2 opportunities with sprinters there, so they'll also have to put their riders on the front, but this is with 4.2 kilometers to go, a pretty handy lead for Van der Breggen.
Yeah, she's looking very strong indeed as she goes clear, and it's now Boels Dolmans, the team of Lizzie Armistead, who are on the front. Armistead, the British champion, the winner of the World Cup last season, the winner, of course, of a stage of the Aviva Women's Tour recently. The tempo is absolutely flat out right now, and they are just peering through the rain as Van der Breggen maintains her advantage. This is a fantastic attack by Anna van der Breggen. 13 seconds, and Boels Dolmans are having to chase hard. The entire team now coming forward to try and drill this and bring Van der Breggen back into the peloton.
Well, they certainly are doing everything they possibly can to bring this back. They know that Van der Breggen's a dangerous rider to have out there. They're not going to play games here, but they're going to need some support from the other teams. It's just Boels Dolmans, the team of Lizzie Armistead right now, doing all the work. So it'll be interesting to see if any of the other teams get up there and give them a little bit of a hand.
Well, the gap looks shorter here on the camera. It is now around about 8 seconds for Van der Breggen, the rider from Rabo Liv. Her teammate is the world champion, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. She has that advantage on the peloton, and she is still holding it at 8 seconds. And once she goes round the corner, gets that little bit of advantage, she goes past our commentary box on the other side of the road right now, and it is Boels Dolmans with their entire team lining up behind Boels Dolmans. Liv Planteur with their sprinter, I think Lucy Garner is in there for that squad. She must be, because of the way they're riding, and a few riders being washed away now by the pace of this peloton.
Well, the pace is certainly very, very high. With 2.7 kilometres to go, just 6 seconds advantage. Looks like it might come back, but Boels Dolmans have obviously decided that Lizzie Armistead really believes that she can win this in a sprint, and my opinion is that she can. She's done a lot of work just sitting at the front, staying out of trouble, but that's the style of rider that she is, and she has the ability to do that. The other rider in the peloton, Emmy Johansson, that can be at the front, pushing the wind. Her team's had a great race, and when your team has a great race, that puts pressure on you to finish off the job.
2.3 kilometres now remaining. Van der Breggen has still got this advantage. This year, she won the Flesh Wallon with a fantastic attack. She's won the Het Nieuwsblad. She's won Drenthe. She is a rider that you do not want to give 4 or 5 seconds to, because she can just hold on. She hasn't even thought of looking round right now. And Boels Dolmans with Megan Garnier, the American champion now, on the front of the race. 6 seconds. She opens up another slender bit for the first time. She looks around. Don't do that, Anna. Just keep going, because this peloton have got to bring you back, and right now this advantage would be enough to win this race.
Well, 6 seconds, and she's holding at 1.8 kilometres to go, and you can see that the bunch are doing everything they possibly can on these wide roads to bring this back, but there's just not that much firepower left in the peloton. It's been a very demanding race, a lot happening, so there's a lot of tired legs in there, but just getting around that corner is a big advantage for Van der Breggen.
44 kilometres an hour she was doing along that stretch. That is tough. It's not easy out here this afternoon, as we see 1.5 kilometres to go. The sprinters will be just holding back a little bit. Van der Breggen, with that magnificent attack up the Champs-Élysées, has still got her advantage intact as she comes out of the murk of the tunnel. Is Van der Breggen going to hold off this entire peloton in La Course? It is only Boels Dolmans who are prepared to take on the chase, and she still has the advantage, and it is still intact at 6 seconds.
7 seconds now, so they've got her in sight. They know that she's just there, but it looks like they're doing everything they can to bring her back. That's a disastrous crash we've just seen there, but that was bound to happen under pressure.
The world champion is down. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot is on the deck. Lots of riders have crashed on that corner. That was the corner that Lizzie Armistead crashed on last year. 1 kilometre of racing to go. Van der Breggen is still clear for the Rabo Liv team, and it looks now like she's just got to put her head down now, keep pedaling, and get through that final corner and hit 3:50 to go. This is a big, big chance for this Rabo Liv rider.
It certainly is, because that gap doesn't look so big from this angle, but it probably is a little bit bigger, so she's got a really good chance to hold these riders off.
Anna van der Breggen now goes to the final turn in towards the finish line, and it's now Velocio Schramm with Tiffany Cromwell and the rest of the riders on the front. A tiny group now trying to make their way in towards the finish line. Lizzie Armistead is still there. 2 hours and 4 minutes of racing, but it is Anna van der Breggen who is first through the corner. She's got 350 metres to go. Lucy Garner is up towards the front of this race. Van der Breggen powering her way now. 200 metres to go. Don't look down now. Lucy Garner is trying now to go for the finishing sprint. It's Amy Peters, actually. Amy Peters there, who's trying to bring this back, but Anna van der Breggen holds them off for an entire lap of the Champs-Élysées. Anna van der Breggen wins La Course by Le Tour de France. What an absolutely spectacular solo effort.
Well, that was very well earned and well deserved. And Rabobank, they did ride Rabo Liv. They rode a fantastic race, and you can see there in the sprint behind, she's got that comfortably, and the sprint for second place looks like it goes to Jolien Daughter there just on the finish line. And oh, look at that, a fabulous victory. A very, very strong ride. She made a move on the uphill, used her power to her advantage. Very, very strong ride.
That was a fantastic effort there. What a fantastic effort by Anna van der Breggen to win the race. Anna van der Breggen wins. Jolien Daughter in second place. It was Amy Peters who raced through in third place. And I think Lizzie Armistead may well have finished in fourth place there, but Van der Breggen, so much power She attacked on that uphill section. Rabo said that they would go out on the attack today to try and not let this happen in a sprint, and she has managed to hold off this peloton for an entire lap almost of this course. What a spectacular victory.
Et le tableau d'honneur qui vous sera remis par Jean-François Pécheux, le directeur de l'épreuve. Dans un instant, on va descendre au podium. On pourra rester.
So victory to Anna van der Breggen on the cobbles of the Champs-Élysées in the second La Course by La Tour de France, and incident pack race. There's the Orica AIS squad, and Annabelle's with me on the couch with Hank and Anthony Tan. And what about that for a solo attack, and how about that for an incident pack race?
Oh, that was so fantastic. What a great finish, nail-biting finish. And Anna van der Breggen, she's come hot out of winning the Women's Tour of Italy, the Giro Rosa, just less than a couple of weeks ago. She won La Flèche Wallonne, the World Cup, back in the early season. She's had all this form, and, you know, just to come out and then win a race like this with her brilliant time trialling, awesome. Right down to the nail-biting finish there. Fantastic.
And Hank, those conditions, you know, just tough. Very, very difficult.
Very tough. I mean, it looks like it's a very cool day there. I mean, it'd be horrible on the legs. You know, they obviously got the rough cobbles going up and down the hill there, but you know, Orica Greenedge softened the race up for this girl to win. I mean, they attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked, and then, you know, Koos Moerenhout's the director in the car for Liv Rabo, and good on him for setting her up on the last lap, because, you know, their team leader crashed.
And Tanny, twice we saw Gracie Elvin, the Orica rider, attack with Verve. Melissa Hoskins was out there as well. So the Australians were really agitating the race, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. They were lighting the race up, but as soon as, you know, we went to the live pictures and saw it was raining and we saw a number of crashes, I thought, well, this is going to favour those from Dutch teams and particularly the Dutch and Belgian riders. So Van der Breggen, a little bit of a surprise, but perhaps not so much given the conditions.
And you saw Jolien de Hoor finish second and Amy Peters in third place. So there's the podium. Liz Armistead, of course, has been an Olympic medalist and the current British road champion, finishing in fourth place. And we know she came a cropper last in last year's race, won by Marianne Vos. But I suppose totally different conditions. But the Dutch rider took her risk and she took her chance. Do you think the peloton was totally organised in chasing her down?
No, I think there was a little bit of hesitation. They weren't lined up. We know what it looks like when they're going flat chat and they're all lined out behind just giving everything. I think there was that little bit of a hesitation. Which team was going to do the chasing? Was it going to be Bolstormen? Was it going to be one of the other teams just trying to fox it out? I don't know, but I reckon that was just that hesitation. Those corners were wet and it just slows the whole thing down.
Yeah, I mean, with all the crashes we saw, I mean, there really wasn't a full team there, I don't think, at the finish.
No, well,
I mean,
we saw the world champion was crashed in
Shelley Olds went out, the world champion crashed. We never really had a full team, I think, really get organised for the finish there, because there was so many injured girls out there. Yeah. There was a lot of crashes, especially in the last turn. I mean, there was a lot of reactionary crashing there. I mean, obviously when you see a crash anywhere when it's wet, girls will put the brakes on, and as soon as you touch the brakes on wet cobbles in a crash, cannot believe that derailleur did not go into the back wheel there. But that's exactly, that's a reactionary crash.
Yeah.
You see the crash, you hit the brakes, and unfortunately when you're on wet cobbles, you're just going to slide sideways. There's not too much you can do about it unless you pull the foot out and just try and steady it. So it's like ice. It's like an ice rink out there today. So, you know, good on them for getting through it. I mean, in the end, there was only probably 25 riders in the final chasing the winner. So, you know, it was, what a great finish.
Yeah, it was great. I didn't predict that. I really thought it was going to come down to a bunch sprint, and so I'm happy. I always love the breakaway over a bunch sprint. Yeah,
well, Van der Breggen was the champion of La Course for the second year. After the break, we'll have reaction from the Champs-Élysées and look ahead to the final stage of the Tour de France. Stay with us. And it's a welcome back. We've just seen Anna van der Breggen, the Dutch rider, win of the Champs-Élysées, the second La Tour by Le Tour de France. And we've got Mike Tomolara standing by at the Champs-Elysees with one of the AOS Orica riders, Amanda Spratt. Tomo, congratulations on 20 Tours de France. And what has Amanda got to say after the race?
Thank you very much, Basher. Well, I've just got to say it's raining here. I haven't seen rain in the 19 years that I've covered this Tour de France on the Champs-Elysees. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. I'm joined by Maddie Keenan. Great to see the lovely face, the smiling face of Maddie Keenan, and more importantly, Amanda Spratt. You are dripping wet. It was a horrible day out there for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. We had rain, light rain from the start, and it just got heavier and heavier, and it's pretty much like racing on an ice rink out there. And I think, Mum, I'm going to need your tips for watching this after stay, I reckon.
I suggest Mike actually host the Tour de France in summer in the future, because you're shivering. It was really cold, but how treacherous was it? We saw so many falls, even just in a straight line.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There were falls just riding up the straight. Someone hit a little patch of oil and it was just slid out, and you couldn't even touch your brakes in the end. There was sort of just dodging and just hoping for the best when you went around a corner or even in the straight line as well.
You've got half of Paris on your face at the moment. Looking forward to a shower?
Yeah, definitely looking forward to a shower, a nice warm meal and cozying up, and I think we get to hang around and watch the men's race, so that's going to be interesting.
Amanda, what do you make of the winner today, Anna van der Breggen? You've raced against her. She's done really well over the last couple of weeks. She's a solid lady. Yeah,
absolutely. An absolute class ride. I think, everyone expects here that it's always going to be a bunch sprint, and Rabobank Liv came here without a true sprinter as well, so that attack was all class. And to hold off a quality field with people really trying to chase her down was very, very impressive.
Now tell us, you've been here before last year. This is the second edition of La Course. It is very special, despite the rain?
Yeah, no, it's very special. I think every rider in the women's peloton always wants to come here and race. It's one of the biggest spectacles we get. We know that it's broadcast worldwide, which we don't really get apart from the World Championship, so it's a really, really big deal for us.
It's not the most important race athletically, but is it the most important race to the future of women's cycling?
I think so, yeah, and that's sort of the direction we're going in, where we can be alongside the men's race and have the coverage as well, and also for the sponsors as well, it's really important. It's broadcast worldwide, so it's really getting that attention and the media coverage that we really need, I think, to progress the sport forward as well.
Does that add to the pressure in the whole peloton? Do you feel as if in this race you've got a real responsibility to race aggressively? Because that was an incredibly aggressive race.
Yeah, I think, certainly. Like, everyone's there and everyone wants to have a great race, put the name out there, put the team, the sponsors out there, but I think on the same time, though, this is how we race a lot of the time. It's always very aggressive racing. We race shorter races than the men, and the point is that it just doesn't get seen. So, every time we do get seen on the TV, people can really start to see actually how we do race. Yeah, it's good to see women's racing on a network like SBS, and we get to see the women's racing at the World Championships each and every year, the entire race, and you've been there before, Maddie. This, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, does this event rival the World Road Championships in September every year?
It does in terms of the profile and what it means for women's cycling. The question before to Amanda, this isn't the most important race athletically for women, but it's the most important race, in my view, in the promotion of it. The World Championships are the most important athletically, and the world title in 2012, when Rachel Neylan was second, that was the best race I think I commentated on that year. It was a brilliant race. Yeah, I agree, and we hear that time and time again from whether it's commentators, spectators watching the race, even some of the male riders too, just saying, wow, that was a really, really exciting race. And so I think the more and more we can get broadcast and more media exposure we can get for the sport, more people will realise that, and then more sponsors will come on board. I think that will really help to progress it.
Well, let's just have a look at the presentation now, if we can. Just go through the presentation here from the bronze medalist, third place.
Well, the top three place getters today, we had Van der Breggen taking the win. De Oor was in second place, and then Amy Peters in third position. Lizzie Armistead in fourth place. She was one of the favourites, a fair bit of pressure on her shoulders. But Jolene De Oor, her second place finish today, she was one of the favourites as well. And was everybody marking her back in the peloton?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Everyone came in here knowing that she was a big favourite. She'd just come off a tour in Belgium where I think she won every single stage on offer. So along the Pave as well. For her, with the rain as well, it's like a Belgian classic for her. So people were certainly marking her and looking to wiggle Honda in the final there to chase that gap down.
The Belgians, I had lunch with the Belgians from Spores at their TV network and asked them if they were covering the race. They said, yeah, we're covering it. We can win it. Of course they were going to cover it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they were looking for her to take the win, but I think she can walk away happy with second as well. I mean, a podium here is huge, huge thing for any team.
And Van der Breggen, we've spoken about who's won the race. Take us back to September last year. She's at the World Championships in the team time trial. She crashed and broke her pelvis. To go from that back to this position, and having won the women's Giro and now won here in Paris, What a return.
Yeah, absolutely. Very tenacious and consistent rider, I think, too. To have that horrific crash last year, people were thinking it was going to take months for her to come back, but I think she was back on the bike by November, December already and just building solidly all the time. She actually won the first Spring Classic that we had in February, so she came back with a bang and she's just been getting stronger and stronger. She's just one of these riders that you always know is dangerous no matter what terrain.
All right, let's just pause now and have a listen to the winner of the second edition of La Course by Le Tour de France. It's Anna van der Breggen from the Netherlands.
So how do you feel after just winning possibly the biggest women's race there is on the women's calendar to win?
Yeah, I cannot really believe this. We had a good plan with the team, and Pauline was feeling really well. She was going for the sprint, and yeah, she lives in France, so it's also important for her. And yeah, we said I attack in the last lap, so it's good for me and also for the teams. They have to chase me, so that was the plan, and I did, and I managed to keep it until the finish, so it's great.
So it was actually the plan for the Rabo Liv team to work for Pauline Ferrand-Prévot today?
Yeah, we had more options, of course, and it was a hectic race, so we all have to be in front and see what a good moment is. But yeah, for the sprint, Pauline was feeling really okay, and she was supportive the whole day, so she was doing really good.
And did it cross your mind in the team meetings or when you were told to do this attack with a lap to go that you could possibly hold off the women's peloton?
Well, no, because you know it's hard when you are on front alone with a chasing peloton behind you. It's really difficult to hold it, but it's a good situation for the team, and then you are in front instead of chasing, so it's good anyway. But yeah, it's great.
Is this one of the biggest races that you've won? Would you class this as one of the biggest races?
Yes, it is. If you look around, you hear on the Champs-Élysées with so many people, and it's a great race to ride. I think for all the women here, we all like it, and of course it was a bit dangerous today, but the race I think was really hard and beautiful.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. That's the winner, Anna van der Breggen, and the presentation is being made right now. Amanda Spratt's with us. Amanda, there's a lot of emotion on that podium. It means a lot to these women.
Yeah, I even feel emotional watching it, actually, to see the female riders up there with the Arc de Triomphe and the Champs-Élysées behind them. It's a very emotional moment, I think, for the winner there and the podium place getters.
What about the start of the race? What's it mean to you guys and that extra nervous tension with this exposure that you get?
Yeah, we're all saying it's one of these races that we get the most nervous for in the whole year. Just we know the exposure, we know that it's a really big deal for us, so everyone's really jittery, and it's a mixture probably of real nerves and real excitement at the same time, and that's one of the reasons why we come out. It is really one of the hardest races we do all season, just pure speed of the race, and everyone just wants to be there in the front.
You're not nervous at the moment, but you are shaking. I think you look a little bit cold.
Yeah.
It's the coldest day we've had all July.
Yeah, and who knows, it's going to be today on the last day, so.
Well, let's just have a look at this and just take it all in. I think it's a pretty important moment for women's cycling. Would you like to be up there one day, Amanda? I'm sure it'll happen. You're a former national champion of Australia. You know what it takes to win. But to be here in Paris on the Champs-Élysées, prior to the men coming through, and seeing this lady from Rabobank raise her arms in triumph, wow, pretty good, huh?
Yeah, certainly. This would be a dream race for, I think, any rider to win, and you can see the emotion there on her face crossing the finish line.
Fair to say that your strategy played into her hands because you guys were clearly very aggressive. Was this the move that you expected from Johansson?
Yeah, I think, certainly that Rabobank came in here probably with a similar plan to us. They didn't have a pure sprinter, so they were definitely looking to be aggressive. I think, probably we did miss that move in the final. We were looking more to Emma for the very finish there. So, yeah, we'll remember that one for next year.
What's next on the program for you?
Next on the program, I have a little bit of a break now, and then off to Norway and Sweden for a tour and a World Cup there, and then the preparation for the World Championships, hopefully.
All right, Amanda, we'll let you go. You are very, very cold. Jump on your bike, get into a hot shower, wipe your face. You're looking good despite the rain, and congratulations on making it here to Paris yet again for the second year in a row.
Thanks very much.
Good on you. Amanda Spratt from New South Wales, representing Orica AIS. We'll let you go. You just step down. You're on Robbie's box. Just a secret there. That's Robbie's box, okay? Just in case you were wondering back home. Don't you stand on that box, whatever you do.
I'll avoid the box.
Well, you know, this is quite an incredible occasion, Maddie. To see so much rain fall on the cobbles here, let's just quickly look ahead to the men's race now. We haven't seen this sort of rain in, well, for several decades.
For your 20 years.
Well, what's it going to do, do you think, for the race coming up?
We've spoken to the Chief Commissaire and got the direction from him as to what happens with the yellow jersey. And the Chief Commissaire now has the discretion to make a call throughout the race. If he figures it's too dangerous, he'll then say, well, the race for the general classification stops next time through the finish line. The race is still on for the stage victory though, but if he figures it's too dangerous, he'll make it safe for yellow and call that neutral, but then the race will still be on for the finish places in terms of the battle for the green jersey as well.
Can I take you back to December of last year? A town or a city in Tasmania, Launceston. There was a criterion held there. You commentated, we were showing it on SBS, the Launceston one-day criterium. Now, similar conditions, like we're experiencing here today, were experienced on that day.
Yeah.
Now, on that day, Chris Froome was a guest of the event on behalf of Richie Porte, who comes from Tasmania. Chris Froome and Richie Porte were forced to withdraw from the event very early. Now, how will that affect Froome, knowing he doesn't like the race or the rain, knowing he bailed from last year's Tour de France in similar conditions? How will that affect him, do you think?
Launceston won't affect him at all because that was in December, this is July. That was preparation. He just wanted to stay safe and avoid any crashes. Here, he's got the whole Sky team around him. They'll protect him big time and they'll keep him out of trouble. Completely different scenario. But we've seen Chris Froome already. All the arguments about his bike handling skills being a question mark. Well, he was one of the best in the rain and the crosswind on stage 2. He was in the front group. He was one of the most aggressive over the pave on stage 4. Vincenzo Nibali tried to attack him and drop him on a treacherous descent in the Alps. He dealt with it. He'll deal with this. He's got yellow.
All right, Matty, looking forward to your commentary later on along with Paul and Phil. Bash, what do you make of all that? The rain, Matty Keenan, we're seeing him for the very first time. And what did you make of Robbie's box?
I like Robbie's box, Michael. I think it's fantastic, and I'm glad you've exposed it to the world. Brilliant stuff. And I look forward to your views on the final stage. That's Mike Domelaris and Matthew Keenan, and an exciting finish to the women's race. But let's look at stage 21 of the great race, the Tour de France. Henk, a sprint finish win for Peter Sagan would cap off a 4th straight green jersey. Can he do it? Can he gain his first stage win since 2013?
Oh, he can do anything. That guy can just about do anything. I love him. I love that he's part of the Tour de France. It's his conditions, really, isn't it? But he just doesn't have a big lead out. So, you know, he might get a few hands from his team, but they're all climbers, unfortunately, so won't see too many guys like that. But you would have to think someone like Andre Greipel with a big lead-out train, they love this stuff. So you imagine having that lead-out train. Johnny Degenkolb hasn't won yet.
Yep.
Hasn't won one yet, so... You know, for me, it's all Andre Greipel, but I'd love to see Peter win.
OK, Tanny, you're one for historical perspective. Where does Chris Froome's 2 Tour victories sit in the modern-day pantheon for you?
Well, a number of riders have won 2 Tours de France. I think, but conceivably he could win 4 or 5 because he says he gave an interview to L'Équipe, the French sports newspaper, the other day. He said, I can keep riding to perhaps 36, 37, 38 years old. He's only 31 now, I believe, this year, so he's got plenty more tours to come. Yeah, 30 years old, sorry. So, yeah, he could conceivably ride another 4 or 5 tours as a leader.
And Annabelle, I suppose the question for Aussie fans, Richie Porte, he's leaving Team Sky. We assume he's going to BMC, but that's yet to be totally played out. In your view, has he done enough to convince the ardent experts of world cycling that he's a genuine GC contender and a major team leader in a big team?
Well, personally, I don't think he's loony enough to be a Tour winner. You've got to be very special, very different, and it's only maybe that he hasn't shown it to us yet. I just think physically we've seen not enough consistency in the form. And just, we don't know whether it's mentally or physically, but maybe there's just not enough there. I'd love him to prove me wrong, though. But just at the moment, I can't see him winning a Tour.
OK.
Hope he proves me wrong.
Yeah, well, I hope it's so too. Tanny, your prediction for stage 21? Who do you think's going to poke the bib out at the end?
I'd have to concur with Henk. I think that Greipel has got this one. The guy who might come close will be Degenkolb. Cavendish, I just don't feel he's got that same strength which he had a couple of years ago. So Greipel by a fair margin for me.
OK, well, it's been a great stretch, a fantastic Tour de France. Henk, thanks for your efforts both on the pavé and
I loved it.
Back in Sydney.
I absolutely loved being there the first week. I loved doing the review shows.
Good on you.
Hopefully I'll be back for next year.
Annabelle,
and
great.
thank you for coming.
No problems, and great to see you, Annabelle.
Thanks.
And Tanny, likewise.
Bash, hopefully I'll have another jacket by next July.
And our thanks also to Al Hines. Thanks to our panel and to you at home. Coming up right after the break, it's the final stage of the 2015 Tour de France. The peloton rolls into Paris with Chris Froome in yellow before one frenetic sprint down the Champs-Élysées. It's the victory every fast man wants on his Palmares. So settle in for stage 21 of the Tour de France on SBS, the home of cycling. Until next time, it's bye for now.